It may be the end of the week, but as you know, through podcast magic, the end of the week is never actually the end of the week, and both of us have a lot of things to do today. So let's get this done.
Yes.
Behind the headlines, the article that jumped out at all of us: big news in Greater Montreal.
Western Montreal.
Well, I think $100 million investment's big news anywhere.
Yeah.
So Walmart was going to build a 500,000 square feet. I know some of the articles got the
number wrong.
The numbers
10 times
wrong.
smaller.
It's so funny how you get the square meters and square feet confused, and there's a 10x difference in this when you square them. Anyway, so Walmart had announced plans, had already acquired or was renting land. The construction had already begun, at least in terms of preparing the ground for this $100 million distribution center that was going to be a central e-commerce distribution facility for Quebec and the Maritimes, Atlantic Canada, because without the Maritimes is Atlantic Canada without Newfoundland. It becomes Atlantic Canada when you...
I did not know that.
Yeah. PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, those are the Maritime provinces.
You add
Newfoundland, you got the Atlantic provinces.
You learn
A little
every
bit of
day.
trivia that you'll never need, but but now you have it. So the local newspapers, the Montreal Gazette, La Presse, all of those good folks, freaking out at this pullout. The mayor of Vaudreuil, which is the suburb which is off the island on the west. It's an interesting. It's a very good warehouse territory because you've got the highway, the 417 that gets you to Ottawa. You've got the 401 that gets you into southwestern Ontario and obviously Toronto. The 30, the 40, the 20, the major highways of Quebec are also running that through there or adjacent to it. And Walmart said no, and instead they say they're going to spend $100 million investing in their stores.
Yes, and in this article, the journalist who was talking to the mayor, as you said, and also interviewed a professor, came up with, because Walmart
didn't give a reason why they were pulling out.
Correct.
They just said we're pulling out, but don't worry, Quebec, we're
putting
spending
the money on the
elsewhere.
stores. And so they came up with potential reasons of why. And so I'd like to have your take on it.
Let's do it.
The first
what were their reasons?
The first reason was traffic.
Traffic, because the bridge
Constant construction
is it's being rebuilt right now because it was falling apart and potentially near killing people, and it's become a massive because of the way Montreal being an island. Once you finish developing the island, you're the next generation of suburbs has to be off island. Vaudreuil rapidly growing. It was farmland and horse trails when I was a kid, and now there's something like 80,000 people live in suburban developments there. So tons of traffic on this highway, on this bridge. The bridge is crumbling. They're rebuilding it. It is, I think it's the Turtle Island Bridge is actually what it's called. Île Torte. Anyway, so that's reason number one.
But which is a silly reason, but for reasons you explain, it's actually a prime location.
Yeah, it's a prime location.
And if you build
easy
a warehouse,
to avoid that bridge in so many directions, and you don't pull out.
I know exactly.
The warehouse construction is probably an 18-month at the fastest, if not 24-month project.
Bridge should be done.
Even if it's not done, we're talking about 9 months, 10 months, 12 months. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
That is the lamest speculation I've ever heard.
Different horizon. Then the second reason they brought up was, the political climate here in Quebec.
Right.
That scares businesses because of its...
Now, this is how you know you're reading the Montreal Gazette or an English newspaper, because I don't think the French papers speculated along this line. Again, something that makes zero sense. Walmart has an enormous presence in Quebec, is completely comfortable working in the French language, and as much as there are some nut jobs who would love to turn everything into a fight about language politics, that makes zero sense for this.
It makes zero sense, especially in the context of a direct-to-consumer distribution facility.
Yeah.
Like, you have to position
your
market.
We're not
Not second largest province we're going to drop.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the third point they mentioned was not actually a reason, but that professor there's a little bit of irony in this, but was saying that it's definitely not the economic situation. Because Walmart is competing with Amazon, it could not be for economic reasons that they are pulling out. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I have two things to say. A lot of times, whether that's Nicola or Nina, like one of our marketing gurus internally, or just generally, people will say, "Hey, you're a partner at a consulting firm. What are the trends that you're seeing in the industry?" And I always kind of freeze. I don't know, from trends. I find that very cheesy. But when I saw that, when I saw what this professor was saying, I realized, academics are always about 12 months behind. They don't have their finger on the pulse of what is going on here and now. And that we underestimate how, if you take all the signals across all our clients, we actually do have a very good sense in a much more immediately now way of what's going on in the supply chain and in the economy in general.
Yeah.
It is 100% Walmart backed out, because it makes no sense to be spending $100 million building out and trying to out Amazon. I remember the great Percy Hodge, one of my mentors very early in my career, but he was talking about careers, and this sort of applies to so many things in life. He was saying, don't just try to compete with the guy sitting next to you, because that guy may not be good enough, right? You got to set your own standard of excellence. Amazon itself has been collapsing its logistics footprint. It is not on this massive building tear. So the idea that Walmart, who has an enormous retail presence in Quebec and across North America, needs to be spending $100 million on this e-commerce DC to compete with Amazon. I mean, it's silly. It made sense, and that would have been a compelling argument for 3, even 2 years ago, when we were all in this e-commerce fever pitch. But we're back shopping, and maybe we don't go back to the shopping mall, but that's not because we want to buy everything online all of a sudden. It's because shopping malls suck and need to reinvent themselves. I just read this really interesting thing about how the department store needs to be revived. And I think about, London and Paris, like Lafayette and some of the department stores in London, and thinking, we're tourists, so,
it's exciting.
But what great experiences are. However, it's true. I mean, the Bay needs to be a destination spot, and they aren't doing a terrific job of that. My point is, people still like going to shop.
And I don't want to go too sideways, but because I drove next to it today, and it happens to be also, someone or an organization that we've helped or contributed to, but the Royal Mount, which is that reinvention of shopping.
Right.
When sometimes a lot of people, and I remember, I think you said something about this, that would doubt it, and then you go like a few years later, where people not that they're tired of shopping online, but as you say, they want to have a shopping experience. You go like, this may open at actually a quite perfect time.
I mean, it's and that's why some of the retailers out there are calling it a unified shopping experience, not omni-channel, but only because omni-channel seems to be treating these things as 3 different streams or 2 different streams of purchasing pattern, when in fact everything is about the shopper and giving the shopper what they want, and what the shopper wants a lot of times is how. Yeah, let's face it, this is how pathetic our lives are. Shopping on a Saturday morning, it can be very fun. It's just getting out and doing something, moving your body, go walking to the store. I know a lot of people are driving, but you know what I mean? It's you're not going to get rid of that need for people to go out and congregate, and not congregate because of work, but congregate sort of like stupidly, and commercial transactions are the perfect stupid thing to do to keep you entertained. The people have to be thinking about how to revitalize the bricks and mortar experience versus going off and spending $100 million. But Walmart smartened up. They backed out when they realized this is dumb.
Yeah. So there really are two elements to that conclusion or that observation. Is the one is that demand that has not shrunk but has slowed down compared to COVID times. There's been a slowdown in this, and that makes those large organizations thinking. But the other one is around the consumer experience and or the shopping experience, and therefore, because they talk omni-channel or that ecosystem, you can buy online, pick up in store. There's the curbside. There's the pure direct-to-consumer or online experience and delivery. I find that one piece that is not necessarily brought up in some of these discussions is around also returns. And I think just thinking about that experience of there's the distribution, obviously, and where do you get the goods, but bringing them back. I know me as a personal shopper is the buying something online, but having the ability to return it in store to me is very important.
I think so.
It's very, very important. And so I think that when you dedicate facilities to just distribution, direct-to-consumer distribution, well, you may not be capturing or being able to fulfill that experience of giving a cohesive.
And you think about it. If I'm Walmart, there is obviously an argument at a certain critical mass of volume where it's going to make sense to have a dedicated, centralized e-commerce fulfillment center because of efficiency, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. But even in that environment, that doesn't mean you're running 100% of your online purchases through that facility. There's still going to be times where you're going to want to fulfill that order from a store, and when you think about that, you start off and you say like, actually, I need the hurdle to move things to a centralized facility to be higher, and you know what I mean?
Correct.
So that I'm not going out and just chasing Amazon when we're not, you're not Amazon. You have ingrained assets that can be leveraged to your benefit that are
an advantage over Amazon.
Extremely useful.
Yeah.
So I say kudos to Walmart. I think, of course, you're not going to tell everyone that it's because your e-commerce sales suck, but I don't think that actually says anything about Walmart's performance. I think this is one of those decisions that kind of remind you that, first of all, yes, even Walmart can get caught up in a bubble, which I would say that's what happened. It was an e-commerce building bubble. But at the same time, Walmart smartened up before it was too late and pulled out and did the wise thing. So I think it's kudos, and you know, we can still buy off Walmart's website and still get really good service from them.
Yeah, this is not a negative news. Maybe in a very localized perspective for the Vaudreuil-Dorion area, but as
the
we
mayor
know,
said, we're not really
we're gonna
that
rent it
upset.
anyway.
This building is worth it. It's going to get
someone
filled
else
up
is
anyway.
going to put their hands on it.
But $100 million, was that construction plus equipment, or was it equipment?
It cannot. Well, I don't know. I don't think I.
If they were renting the land, were they going to rent the building? And the reason why this is important, a lot of people don't, you know, when they're thinking about automation, they don't realize that nowadays, if you actually want fully automated warehouses,
the
equipment is going to cost more than the building.
Yeah.
And that's a very scary thing.
Yeah.
You either have a lot of cash to waste, and by waste I don't mean, well, anyway, yeah, to waste,
to try,
yeah,
yeah.
or you're in for a very scary scary bottom line when the total costs come in.
Yeah. All
So
right.
that I didn't know.
I did not know.
They didn't make that clear, but they couldn't get the square footage right, so
We could
I'm not
calculate it.
surprised
We could
that the
calculate it.
reporters.
All right. So I think
We've
we're
done it?
Yeah.
All right.
We're good.
Have a good week.
Have a good week.
Have a good weekend.
Of course.